Hagvin just really felt like it was time for everyone to die.
I think it's time to kill everyone!
Reginald here. Well, they put the chain axe on psyker. You know full well what we're doing here. Build name, Reginald's psyker chain axe build. I mean, that's what it is. Intended role, all-rounder and frontliner. Fluff basis, insane half-prescient biomancer from Dark Heresy. Difficulty viability, damnation. Now, allow me to explain here. When I rate the difficulty viability for my builds, I am trying to imagine a typical player using this build. Not the best possible player, just someone who's relatively competent. In this case, the build is weak enough that I think the average player is going to struggle a bit more than they otherwise might. I have beaten Maelstroms with this, but whenever the going gets rough, this build does have a habit of falling apart. Maybe that's just the psyker experience, but I feel like I've done better with similar builds with different weapons, so you have been warned. Weaponry: Orestes Mark IV Assault Chain Axe, Godwin Branks Mark IV Bolt Pistol. The Orestes Mark IV Assault Chain Axe is my favorite weapon. I've done numerous tutorials on it, of which this is the most recent, and still the most authoritative. The Mark IV Chain Axe is now available on psyker, and it is very fun to use. Though I think it's quite probable that the Mark XII Chain Axe could be the superior choice for psyker. I'll test that another day. For now, this build is designed around the Mark IV, and I tested it with it. Ultimately, the Mark IV has better horde clear at the cost of some big boy clear. I do want to say this up front though, my opinion of the Mark IV on psyker so far is it's mid. If someone can disabuse me of that opinion, do let me know. The Godwin Branks pattern bolt pistol is an excellent choice right now for basically anyone, and while it still has some issues with aiming on the whole, it is much more reliable and hits very hard. You are completely welcome to swap this out for a good Mark II las pistol with Infernus if you like. Curios. For this build on psyker, I am running 2 toughness and 1 stamina curio. I always like to take at least 1 stamina curio to improve reliability when push attacking and sprinting. Psyker has a very quick stamina recovery, but a low stamina cap based. Blessings and perks. For the Mark IV Chain Axe, I will be running Bloodletter and Headtaker with Maniacs and Unyielding. This gives you a few surprising one-tap rev breakpoints on some targets like Ragers, like this light attack rev, but it's not as nice as it is on Zealot or Vet. For this reason, I think you're welcome to try other blessings, especially doubling down with Slaughterer and Headtaker. For the bolt pistol, I ended up choosing Puncture and Surgical with Maniacs and Unyielding as well. I find myself shooting into bosses as much as meleeing them with this class, and the Maniac breakpoint is necessary for trappers. Key talent nodes. The key nodes that make this build work are all these toughness nodes: Assail, Lightning Speed, Warp Splitting by Crack of Bone, Prescience, Anticipation, Scryer's Gaze, Warp Speed, Precognition, Endurance, Disrupt Destiny, and these 3 subnodes. Additionally, I really like Surety of Arms in pairing with the bolt pistol. I think it feels really good, but it's not absolutely critical. I do normally like to provide alternatives to the build, but I haven't really figured out where I can take nodes out on this to make something else. I have a second build in mind, but for now, this is what I think works. Playstyle. This build is designed as a hybrid Berserker Gunker build. It's a prescient Biomancer Lunatic build. The idea is that you will focus on melee for most of your gameplay. With a quick draw bolt pistol, you will snipe bigger targets and specialists. With Assail, you can preserve your ammo with targeted throws or just dump them to pump your perils up before diving into melee and get higher cleave. The key thing to note is that as much as this is a melee frontliner build, it does suffer from typical psyker sustain issues. This is really where Assail can come in clutch with its ability to rapidly build perils for you to cleanse, creating a quick toughness pump. It's also worth noting that the Chain Axe benefits a lot from Psyker's super short stamina regen cooldown, allowing the Mark IV's strong push attacks to be effectively leveraged. However, in exchange, the Psyker does have the worst dodge distance base of the human classes. The recently buffed Mark IV Chain Axe distance on dodge does help with this, but it does sometimes feel like you're mired when you would have otherwise escaped with a different weapon like the dueling sword. The big key to the playstyle of this is slapping Scryer's Gaze on and going to town in melee is the trick to getting a lot of damage out of your melee attacks. It significantly reduces the time to kill on a horde by about 10 seconds and also provides you with a lot of sustain and extra damage. This is really where that Berserker moment comes into play, because when you hit this button you can really start going hard and you can take a lot more than you normally would, especially with that 20% toughness damage reduction in effect from endurance. Tips. I have 3 for you here. I already mentioned this a little bit, but Assail is really good for pumping up your perils so that you can take advantage of warp splitting as you go into melee and also thin out the horde as you dive in. But it can also be used to quickly build up perils and then discard perils when you're low on toughness. It's one of the easiest ways to pump your perils up if you don't have Scryer's Gaze handy. Speaking of perils and generating it in order to reduce it, don't forget that you can just start blocking attacks in order to boost your perils and then you can discard it in melee by getting a bunch of kills. Generating and discarding perils is your key source of toughness on this class, so keeping that in mind is important. The other big tip centers on warp splitting. Warp splitting is not exactly what you read on the tin. While it will allow you to hit more targets than the cleave cap, it doesn't increase the cleave cap for damage. There's kind of two stats in Darktides. There's the cleave damage and the cleave stagger cap, and both of those are separate, so you can hit more targets and stagger them if you have high perils and are using warp splitting, but you aren't going to be dealing more damage to more targets, at least from my testing, which admittedly was brief, but just take a look. What this means is that in melee, high perils provides you with a quite a bit broader safety window, but it doesn't necessarily improve your overall kill speed. Alright, that is all for now. Thank you all so much for visiting. We're clutching on Psyker, let's go. Bye-bye.
Yes.